You know what a big problem is that a lot of game studios have now, especially ones that have been out for like 10 plus years? Well, they rely on you liking the base game before you see what they can do now, what they can make in 2023. And it was a problem Warframe was having. We looked at their game last year, we gave a ton of feedback, and now Warframe reached out to us to say, we have the solution. We know how to get new players into our game in a way that just doesn't cater to the current player base. So we're going to look at that today. Warframe sponsored this video for us to take a look and give feedback. We've got a link down below that'll get you a bunch of free stuff. So let's dive into the Duviri Paradox. You might remember when I played Warframe like 12 months ago, one of my big pieces of feedback of that new player experience was I didn't know what the hell was going on. There's a lot of content in this game, a huge amount of content, an entire solar system of planets to explore and do all things, and the game didn't explain it to me very well because it comes out, and a lot of games do this, is they release a brand new big piece of content, and often there's a ton of marketing that comes with it, there's YouTube videos that come with it, there's trailers, all that kind of stuff, and a lot of players who are already playing the game come into this new piece of content already kind of knowing what the hell is going on, and they also have that foundational knowledge from playing the game already, so they can easily adapt to the new thing. But you think about Path of Exile, you think about Guild Wars 2, you think about Destiny 2, you go into these places and they've got years of this content and it's all new to you, including the base game stuff. And often what happens is the technology, the resources, all those things have advanced over the years, and what the game is putting out in its later content cycles is considerably better than what exists in the base game environment, why it's so important to go back and say, this is what we do now. The content, yes, there's older content now, it's like 10 years old, but we need to show you what we're capable of these days, because that's where the game is going and that's what's interesting. Even if it's just a case of upgrading the visuals or the cutscenes. The cutscenes we can make now in 2023 versus what we could make all those years ago is so much better. And it won't look dated, it won't look old. And Warframe came up with the Duviri Paradox, and almost an entire answer to the same feedback I gave of their new player experience. So what is it? The Duviri Paradox is totally free. Warframe is free anyway. That starts you off as a new player to go into it if you've never played Warframe before, and it has a lot of stuff for legacy players as well, where you'll make a brand new character. Literally, you'll make a brand new character, and you'll be stuck into this world of craziness, and then they play this fantastical cutscene. You're like, okay, I'm kind of intrigued in what's going on here. I certainly was. And then they did a great thing. If you've seen any advertisements for this, or marketing, or anything like that, you'll know there's a horse. And if you go to install it, you'll see a horse with wings. You get a flying horse at some point. Typically, we would expect to get this in like mission 6 or 7, somewhere down the line. Nope. First mission. There you go. You get it, and you're going to need it for this gameplay mode. And it is a separate gameplay mode that has been added to the game to do two things. One, as an existing piece of content for veteran players to sink their teeth into, it has longevity, and as a great way of introducing brand new players to the game. This is why I love this thing so much. Oh my god, it split my real flesh hand in half. That's disgusting. Oh, my fingers are dangling. That's gross. That's gross. That is disgusting. I don't know why. That's gone right through me. Ew. Oh no, I don't like that at all. Oh, they jiggle. From there, you're going to get to alternate between playing the Drifter, which has a Dark Souls style combat system where there's blocks, light attacks, parries, things like that. I personally loved this. Some people did not. We'll get to that later on. And then the Warframe sections, where you'll get the Warframes. So if you're not sure what a Warframe is, if you've never played it, it's essentially the classes of the game. Your spirit goes and inhabits these different suits. Each of the suits has a different set of abilities. Some are tanks, some are range, some are support, and so on and so forth. And they all have very cool styles, movement abilities that are very unique. And you inhabit these frames, as they're called in the game. And that's your class that you'll play with at that moment. And when you're outside of a mission, you can swap between your frames and your collection and so on and so forth. It gives you all the starter ones, so you're not going to be surprised when you actually get to the main game, if you're a new player, of what these things do. You get to play around them, you get to test them out, you get to do it in a nice, safe, simplistic environment as a solo player, at least during the introduction, which is about 3 hours long and well worth a play. If you're looking for something to kill 3 hours with and even just check out, this is it. You go in and then you'll alternate between the Drifter and the Warframe missions. as you go forward. And it's a roguelike. This is why I'm so happy I didn't check this out. I had no idea they were making a roguelike situation. And they did. You'll have powers to collect, buff your character into an aspect you want, and of course, later down the line, when you want to come back, you have different choices and pathways you can go down with your powers to check out different styles of play, and that's the hook. I want to go in and try a heavy melee build. I want to go in and try a very shooter-heavy build. I want to go in and try out a condition build with toxics and poisons and fires and frosts and things like that. You can do all those kinds of things. Massive energy cooldown so I can use all my abilities at all times. These are all the things that I tried out during my 7 or 8 hours of playing this mode. So, what does it bring to the table? Well, firstly, the big thing is it's a brand new tutorial, and it's so much better than what's in the base game. It's crazy. I learned things, even though I have, I think, 70 or 80 hours in Warframe, I learned things in the beginning tutorial of the Paradox that I still didn't know, especially with the movement. Warframe is extremely fast-paced, a lot of big slick movement. It's the main core feature of the game is how fast and mobile your characters are, leaping across chasms and valleys in order to get... It's like parkour, gun shooting. It's really fun. And I learned that I could do vertical shoots. I could block projectiles and reflect them and do all these kinds of things. I was like, I didn't know that. Right. Bullet jump, aim direction, and tap space. I did not know you could do that. I had no idea you could do that. I thought it was just in front of you. I had no idea. Control direction with DNA while holding space. I didn't know you could do this either.
All right.
I had no idea. One of its bigger pluses for me, though, which goes back to when I first played Warframe, is that when I went on the missions, the multiplayer match-made missions, I ran into a real big problem as I had no idea what was going on. And the big reason for that is the gameplay is extremely fast in Warframe, especially the movement. And that meant that oftentimes, if I didn't know the map, which of course I didn't as a new player, I would often arrive at the objective and it was either done, in which case I don't know what happened, or people were completing it and I don't know how they were completing it, and things were happening and stuff. What they do in the Duviri Paradox is they introduce you gently in a solo player mission of how each of the mission types work inside the main game. So you're not going to have that issue going forward. If you run into a life-saving mission, you're going to be like, oh, that's how that works. Yes, I've played it now. If you have to do a power cell excavation mission, you know how that works now. And now you know what the mobs look like that enable this process to work. And you're not playing with often people who have a little bit more knowledge than you that are just AoEing the whole universe and completing the mission in seconds. You're not like, oh, the mission's finished. I guess I was here. And I hate feeling useless in video games, as I know a lot of you do as well. It's a really miserable time. It introduces some good story characters, and there's a little story thread that lasts about 3 hours through it. And then they have the long style form, which you would expect at a roguelike. You can jump in and do long missions where you get super powerful, and you can keep going, and you can keep getting more and more powerful. Good roguelike experience to really explore what your character can do. You've got one that's pure Warframe focused, and you've got some other multiplayer modes which come along with it to come back in, and then you can upgrade your horse. And typical of any roguelike, you can collect resources as well, which you can then spend in the hub world in order to upgrade various things, including using your pony out in the rest of the Warframe universe, naming that thing, getting damage bonuses, all the usual things, along with a lot of really long-term goals if you want to get something really special out of your character, like using the drifter in different environments and things like that. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now we've got another issue. While the Duviri Paradox is certainly super exciting and does a lot of base tutorials, a few of the veteran players are pointing out that it has some flaws and they don't like how it's been implemented. Now, while a lot of people will look at this as a brand new game feature which is on the side and therefore they can go and enjoy it, those people who are looking at it as a brand new player experience and have already a massive knowledge of the game are certainly looking for things that, well, why isn't this being taught? This is an important feature. You're missing out on this aspect. So let's take a look at that. So the veteran players do have a point. They're not just being salty. It's about what doesn't it teach you. It teaches you so much playing through the Paradox. It really does. But one of the things it doesn't teach you is mods. I actually think this is a missed point. They should give you some basic mod knowledge, because the modding your weapons, modding your suit, all that kind of stuff in Warframe is a really big deal. Like a super big deal. And it doesn't do any of it in the Paradox at all. It doesn't do a great job that I found in the base game either. It's kind of intuitive, like you should be able to pick up what you're supposed to do, but with new user interfaces and things like that, it's a little tricky. I know I have several hundred mods on my character. I have tons of duplicates. Some of them are broken. Some of them have to be mixed together. All that kind of stuff can get a little overwhelming when you're picking these things up pretty regularly by playing the base game. And it doesn't include any of that. I would think it would be a good idea to include some basic modding and enemy types, or what kind of ammunition is better against certain enemy types, things like that into the Paradox, so that new players do understand that system. Because it's very, very important. It's very large. It's very intricate. And if you don't really know what you're looking at, it can get a little bit messy, especially when there's a lot of names of certain... This works well against the Blarthon of Gargok. When you're a new player, that doesn't mean a hell of a lot, right? It takes a little bit of playing to get used to the names and then figure out exactly what they're supposed to be doing and whether or not it works or not, especially when it's considered by the older players to be the wrong way to play. So let's talk about that for a minute. You might remember from my original look at Warframe about a year or so ago that I ran into several issues where the way I was playing conflicted with veteran players. And you can go and check that video out now to get the full details on that. But this is where we sort of reach an impasse. Traditionally, in nearly every MMO for years and years, I've told people not to boost, not to go and do certain things, because it's unnecessary. And one of the things that happens during the Duviri Paradox is you are introduced to certain story characters that are relevant to the main game. And a lot of the vets are a bit peed off that these characters exist in the Paradox, and the new player won't know who they are, and isn't it spoilery? No, absolutely not. It really isn't. And I can tell you this from experience as somebody who dived into FF14 without ever playing a single player Final Fantasy, is that a lot of people are like, oh, this boss is kind of a spoiler, isn't it? Kefka would be an example. Well, no, because it's not a spoiler for me, because I don't know what I haven't got context to this yet. It doesn't make any sense. And all that's going to happen is I'm going to experience these things in a different chronological order to what you experience them with. So for a normal Warframe player, they may encounter these characters in the main game and are really excited to see them in the Duviri Paradox, and then feel upset that other new players are not going to experience those characters in that same way because they enjoyed it a lot. Only thing that happens is the context is reversed. In my playthrough, I'm going to meet this character in the Paradox, and then that character is going to reappear for me in a different way later in the main game, and I'm going to have this new, fresh experience that is not necessarily worse by any means. It's going to be an interesting way of encountering this. So although that's been a point of feedback from a lot of the veteran Warframe players, it's not something I agree with. I had a better time, just different, when I went and played all the single-player Final Fantasy games, bumping into those characters and be like, oh, that was that person from Final Fantasy XIV. I just experienced it in a different way and thought that was totally fine. Can there be improvements? Yeah, of course. There can always be improvements to a new game mode that joins the game. One of them in particular I would really like to see is just more variety of powers, but I ask that of nearly every roguelike I play. But this one, there's a good 8 hours that we played, but then there's some really long-term goals that I probably want to hit at some point. But I do feel I kind of explored most, not all, but most of the power paths I can go into. I have made a character that is so obscenely powerful with its melee and can run faster than anybody can mount in the entire game that it literally flashes around the screen and one-shots practically everything. It's super fun, by the way. I totally recommend it.
Okay, ready?
We're doing a
3,
countdown,
2,
right?
1, run!
Hey, friend.
I've built a character that's powered super abilities on its Warframe reduces so quickly that I basically had a BFG from Doom that I could constantly fire without any repercussions and shred entire armies. Awesome. I've done the shooting, I've done all that, but beyond there isn't many places for me to go. And of course, the big appeal of roguelikes is to go back in and try a different build. If you look at the famous ones like Hades and Binding of Isaac, literally hundreds and hundreds of abilities that all work and do things in a different manner. That's what makes every single replay of those games so exciting, is you want that. Doesn't quite have that variation yet, but would love to see it implemented because the ground system that they have, the foundation, is phenomenal. It's really, really fun. My final thoughts on this is what a tremendous effort to bring the modern game to a new player with a whole fresh set of tutorials from the super, super basic to showing you the starter frames. They also give you a progression path to unlock specific frames, which is their long-term progression path. So if you want this certain character that you tried out in the Paradox, You could set a goal to unlock that and guarantee you're going to get it. You give you a week-long path, and then it'll cycle through to a different one later on, so you're constantly upgrading classes. It has that long-term gameplay aspect. And the fact is, a lot of the long-term goals that you can hit in the hub world are all things that affect you in the main game, which is where they want to see you later on, where you unlock things that you wouldn't expect out of Warframe. Overall, this is the kind of thing I want to see in other games. I really want to see this in other games. I want to see people go back, refresh, revamp, not just make a new zone. I think they did a good job with Exiles Reach in World of Warcraft, but look at, like, are we hoping, and I think this is the question that all devs need to ask themselves, especially the ones that have been around for as long as these guys have. Are we just hoping people get through our base game to find the cool stuff that we've added later on? And if we're just kind of hoping that's going to happen and your game looks 10 years old, people are going to see it as an old game. And bringing people right to the forefront and saying, this is what we're capable of, rock and roll with it, and teach you how to play it in a nice, single, safe environment. Superb. Thank you very much. I'm going to leave it there. Check it out. Totally free. Check it out on Steam. I think this is... I know we're sponsored for this video, but, I mean, I've been as objective as possible here, and I had a great time with it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you again. Bye-bye. Oh, I can't with the fingers, dude. If anyone's here... from Warframe team, those fingers need to go. That's disgusting. I think that went well. Don't you, Ben Dog? Yeah, you did. Grump.